On this week's episode of Search with Candour, I'm joined by Emina Demiri-Watson, and we're talking all about agency sins. If you've ever worked with an agency or in an agency, you can probably guess the kind of things we're going to be discussing. It's going to be full of confessions, full of things that agencies are guilty of in digital marketing, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a hot topic and a hot debate, let's put it that way. So stay tuned for that on this week's episode of Search with Candour. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Search with Candour. I am your host, Jack Chambers-Ward, and I'm joined this week by Emina Demiri-Watson from Vixen Digital and SEO's Getting Coffee. Go and check out that podcast, links in the show notes. And Emina and I are talking all about our experiences working with and working for agencies, and more specifically, the sins that those agencies are guilty of committing. That's right, it's time to go to confession and talk about our bad experiences, like I said, both from the working side of things and the working with side of things. And I think it's an interesting conversation. It's a hot topic and a hot debate. We get passionate a couple of times. That's normal on this show. You know, you should come to expect that by now in season 3 of Search with Candour. And I think it's a really great conversation. Emina is a fantastic host in her own right, and it's brilliant to have Emina on the show. And like I said, we'll be doing a crossover with me going on SEO's Getting Coffee in the not too distant future. So I'll put a link for that once that goes live as well. So we'll get a nice little podcast crossover going here as well. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for listening or watching wherever you're listening. And before I get to my conversation with Emina, here is a word from our sponsors. Our sponsor for this week is Wix Studio, the web platform that gives agencies and enterprises the end-to-end efficiency to design, develop, and deliver exactly the way they want. Whether you manage 10 sites or 1,000 sites like some agencies do, here are a few things you can do from start to finish in less than 2 minutes on Studio. You can set up native marketing integrations with Google, Bing, and more in just one click. You can save so much time by reusing custom templates, widgets, sections, and design libraries across all of your sites, instead of having to build them from scratch each and every time. You can easily create seamless handovers by adding tutorials, guides, and more to your client dashboards. And speaking of dashboards, you get a full 360 view of all of your projects from one workspace with total control. And whether you're working your site with fellow SEOs, developers, other marketers, you're able to work on the same canvas at the same time with all of your team members. And of course, you'll be able to leverage some of the best in-class SEO defaults such as server-side rendering and automated structured data markup across all of your Wix sites. That is time up, I'm afraid, but the list keeps on going. Step into the Wix Studio by clicking the link in the show notes or the video description down below and see for yourself. Thank you so much to Wix Studio for sponsoring us here at Search with Candour. Our next sponsor is Core Updates. That is the latest newsletter from the one and only Mark Williams-Cook. You may know Mark from his unsolicited SEO tips and his appearances on this very show. He started this podcast, in fact, and is going to be my co-host every single month on our monthly news recap episodes. But if you just want a bit more Mark, you want all of his unsolicited SEO tips, get them actually solicited directly to your inbox every single week. You get the latest episode of this podcast. You get all of the latest SEO news and articles that Mark has selected and thinks are the things you should be paying attention to. All of that delivered to your inbox every single Monday. So if you want to get, like I said, Mark's usual recaps and stuff, it is one of the best places to go for the latest SEO news and pretty much what you can expect from the best in the industry when it comes to the articles and news that is going on, any updates from Google and all that kind of stuff. Go to coreupdates.com and sign up today to get SEO news, brand new episodes of this very podcast, and Mark's SEO tips delivered straight to your inbox. Coreupdates.com is the place to go. My guest for this week has more than 10 years of experience in digital marketing. She is the head of digital marketing at Vixen Digital and the host of SEO's Getting Coffee, which you can check out on YouTube right now. Welcome to the show, Emina Demiri-Watson.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I mean, it's really nice to be a guest for a change and not be the host. I think, yeah.
It makes a big change, doesn't it? As a person who is a host 99% of the time, it's always nice to be a guest. I feel like the
Yep.
pressure's a little bit off and you can kind of relax a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we spoke about this a little bit before, but yeah, I'm interested to see what happens if I am allowed to just do the talking most of the time.
We'll just unleash you upon the
Yeah,
listeners, and
exactly.
an hour
Yeah.
later, I'll ask my second question.
Yeah, sorry. If that happens, my apologies, everybody. Like fair warning.
That's what we're here for. That's what podcasts are all about, mate. That's why we're here. And we've got a very interesting topic for you, dear listeners and viewers. We're going to be in the confessional booth this week and talking about the sins committed by agencies across the world in SEO. And I love this topic as a person who has worked in a couple of different agencies. I know you have plenty of agency experience as well, Emina. It's a hot topic. It's a controversial topic, and we're going to dive into it. But I guess I want to kick off with, why did you want to talk about this topic? Why is this topic important to you, and why did you want to talk about it on the podcast?
Well, it's a very personal topic because I've learned a lot in the last 3 years. I think it's been 3 years with Vixen Digital. And, I got my bum handed to me a little bit, if I'm honest. Because so I come from a long line of in-house work. So all my career has been spent in-house. I have recruited agencies. I have worked with agencies. I have been applying to many agencies, some good, some bad. And then I switched to an agency just to give it a go. And boy, let me tell you, some of the things that I thought back then, I can now understand the other side slightly better. So it's an interesting transition. So for me, it's super important to build those relationships in a good way. And I'm like really proud that I come from this in-house experience and I can bring the value to the agency, but I can also bring value to myself. I've grown a lot by understanding a little bit better what it means to actually work for an agency.
Yeah, I think seeing both sides of it is so interesting. You get that, like you said, the peek behind the curtain moment where you suddenly realize, like, oh, everything is chaos all of the time in some agencies. Like, there is never a moment where it's all just like, everything's great, everything's fine. And I totally agree with you. I kind of accidentally got into SEO in an in-house role. It was more of a general marketing kind of thing, and kind of stumbled into helping build a website for the company I was working for. Like, yeah, okay, cool.
I like this.
And that kind of thing. Exactly, yeah. And then the pandemic happened, all that kind of stuff, and I ended up working for my first agency. And it was a real kind of, like you said, a moment of truth where I was like, oh, right, this is what agency life is like. And I'm now coming up to 3 years. By the time this episode comes out, I will have had my 3 years here at Candour. So just past my anniversary of 3 years here at Candour.
Wow.
And I spent about a year in the previous agency as well. And yeah, I think there is a lot that in-house people kind of expect from agencies, and the kind of understanding from the external side of things. And from the other side of it, I think a lot of us who work in agency, we have a perception of ourselves and how we present ourselves, which is not always what people are seeing from the outside, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's each side, there's truth to each side. And there's some surprises when you kind of move from in-house to agency. And honestly, like first 6 months when I started off, I was thinking, I'm not sure this is for me. I don't think, like, because of the fact that I was so used to like the control. I think for me, it was the loss of control that was super difficult. I'm no longer in charge of the full funnel. I am in charge of one section of it. And we'll talk about it later on, but it's one of those learnings and one of those kind of misconceptions, and there's ways around it, but it was a shock. I'm glad that I stuck with it because Vixen, it's brilliant. I love working for Vixen, but it was touch and go those first 6 months.
So let's kick off with, I think, a big sin and something I've definitely experienced in the past. And I think the thing that probably annoys me the most about a lot of agencies, and like I said, I've seen it firsthand before, it's the combination of over promising and under delivering. Should we
Oh,
dive into it, Amina?
yes. Oh, yes. That's a massive one, and one of the definitely, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. From a
For sure.
client side, when you're thinking about it, yeah. Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it when I was in house. We're going to be talking about the red flags later on as well. But that was one of the over promising in that first initial pitch. If you sit down with an agency and they're telling you, oh, yeah, we can guarantee results and, we will do this and this and this and this. If it sounds too good, as I said, it probably isn't true. And then what happens is like you then are underwhelmed as a client later on. There's all of these promises that never come into fruition. So that's a really big one, and that's a very valid one as well. When I transferred into the agency setting, that's one of the learnings that I brought with me as well. And thankfully, Vixen is quite good with not doing that anyway. But I'm very, very very careful not to overpromise. With a caveat, there is and connected to this is this over-servicing thing. It's the overpromising without the under-delivering. That's the other side of it, because that's the one that I still have problems with sometimes, because I do sometimes, oh yeah, I can do that, or oh sure, we can add that into our retainer, and then halfway down the line, you are like figuring that now these few days that somebody has paid for is turning into a few weeks because of the fact that you were like, oh yeah, I can do that. So yeah, there's that as well.
I am totally guilty of the, oh yeah, I can help out with that, no problem. If you just get like an email from the client saying, hey, can you help out with this one small problem? And it turns into a much, much bigger problem very quickly. And you realize like, oh, I've spent, exactly, yeah. I've spent hours looking at this GA4. And suddenly the retainer time disappears.
Yeah. And then you're like in this a bit of a limbo, because I don't feel ethically, I don't feel like, it's their fault. It's not really their fault. It's my fault, because I didn't scope it properly in the first place, and I was too quick and too eager. Particularly, I like tinkering and I'm always curious and interested. So if it's something that I'm interested in, oh yeah, I'll kind of be all over it. And then what do you do then? Do you kind of go back to the client and say, well, I've blown your retainer on this thing that turned out to not be so little that you've asked for? It's just, what do you do in those situations? I'm always kind of like, most often I just swallow it, because I feel like I've done it. So I put myself in it.
Yeah. It's always a conversation I have with our account managers here, and they're the ones that are like obviously very conscious of the SEO retainer time and conscious of like where hours are being spent and all that kind of stuff. And you really have to do kind of like a value analysis, right? Like you said, that you have to scope it out and understand like, okay, is this thing we're fixing actually going to change much, or is this something that is not actually going to affect the bottom line, going to affect anything that's happening in the grand scheme of things. For example, if a tracking issue happens, that can be quite a big deal. So maybe that is worth having a look at. We've done that plenty of times here at Candour, where we realize like, oh, we've got this month this amount of retainer time scheduled for content, this amount of scheduled retainer time for technical improvements and stuff. Turns out we need to prioritize the technical side of things, because we noticed some extra. We did a recrawl and we've seen some more issues with the site or whatever it is. Yeah. And shifting that and understanding the priority, I think, is key. Like you said, when it comes to over-delivering and over-servicing, I'm totally guilty of that. I will reply to clients' emails. Yeah. I'm one of those people who has to have a zero inbox, like a zero notification.
Me too.
I have to reply to everything. There cannot be any unread or unreplied to emails. So I will drop a piece of work to reply to a client's email, even though I probably should have just finished that piece of work first. And if this doesn't sum up my ADHD brain, I don't know what does. But I will spin off and suddenly like answer 5 emails and then realize, I was in the middle of doing the content. I spent half an hour doing this thing instead.
No, I can definitely relate to that. And it's because, I mean, again, it's like so colored with my in-house experience, because I know how frustrated I was when I was in-house and I sent off an email, and if it was something that I deemed to be urgent, if I didn't get a response from my agency, it just really, so now I'm very conscious about it, a little bit too conscious, probably. Like you say, I'm getting there. I mean, after 3 years, I better be getting there, because I was a complete calamity at the start when I started. I mean, my directors, they still take the mickey out of me for how I was at the start. You never I was always out of scope, like completely. And I used to do these, which I got told off as well. I used to do these kind of like, because I'm interested in it, I spot something after working hours. And then 2 hours in, I'm still in UA back then, trying to figure it out. And then I get told off by the directors, because unlike, this is the other thing that kind of comes up a lot with like agency sense, is this kind of idea of not having the work-life balance. Thankfully, that is now changing, because the push has been like that. But historically, I think it's one of the things that agencies have been branded with. We're very lucky. I mean, we, especially I have a child, my directors have children. We're very conscious about not trying to, I sneakily sometimes work in the evening just because I'm curious. And I don't consider that work. It's not going to be client work. It's more like training and stuff like that. But we're conscious about it.
Yeah, I think the work-life balance, because of how, like I said at the very beginning of the show, like how chaotic agency life can be, because you're working on 3, 5, 10 different accounts sometimes, and just bouncing from one to another. And like you said, as soon as you go down a rabbit hole and find one thing, suddenly you've spent a third of your workday, half of your workday doing one account. It's like, oh no, I needed to do this as well, and all that kind of stuff. And then all those hours add up very quickly. I was completely burning myself out at my last job, where I wasn't just doing SEO. I was also doing PPC, also doing content, a bunch of other stuff, and I was spreading myself way too thin. And that's part of the reason why I moved to Canada, was because it was an SEO focused role. And so I could really focus on the things I care about and the side that I enjoy the most. I'm not interested in PPC. I'm sorry, PPC people. I know plenty of our listeners of you as a PPC people. It's not my bag. I have a huge respect for you. I do not find it doesn't tick my dopamine hits at all. It doesn't tickle my brain. But I find it very, very interesting now. Like you said, hopefully we're moving in a more positive direction when it comes to that work-life balance, and that so ties into that over-promising side of things, because of the experiences I had before. I would be part of the team who was going for the kind of pitching to the new clients and stuff like that. So I'd go out with one of the account managers, and we would literally drive out to clients and stuff like that. This is just post-pandemic, and just as things were opening up again and we're allowed to travel and things like that, or even if it's just a video call. And I would have that horrifying moment on the call or during the meeting when the person next to me is promising all this crazy stuff, and I'm sat there just being like, yeah, okay, yeah, no problem, 100 hours a week, yeah, sure, no problem, oh god. And inside I'm just panicking, but you have to quietly nod along.
I mean, to be fair, that like when I started at Vixen, I would have been the other person. Yeah, so I know your pain. I do. I've gotten much better, because obviously that's the other side of the coin. Obviously, you can do all of those things for a client, but whether the client, there's a price to it. There really is. You can't if you have an agency that's telling you, no matter what the service tells you, oh yeah, SEO, all of these things, you'll get £300 a month. It's not going to happen, is it? It's kind of like, yes, I can do all of those things for you, but it's going to be a big retainer. You kind of you get what you paid for, really, a lot of the times. So it really is an interesting one. One of the things that you said, which is very interesting as well, is this kind of, so you decided not to specialize, and that for you, that was kind of one of the, and I never thought about it that way, because one of my things is I never wanted to specialize. So I'm like the head of digital marketing, and I remained that, even though like an SEO is like one of my favorites, but I never wanted to specialize because of the fact that I wanted to have my feelers into all these other things as well, and see how it aligns. And one of the kind of sins of agencies, particularly if you have an agency that's split, PPC, SEO, whatever, it's not one agency that's managing the whole thing, is this alignment. It's the problem of alignment you have. And I've seen that when I was in-house as well. You have wasted budget on PPC because they don't understand what you're already ranking for in SEO, and they're bidding for terms that you're in organic position on anyway. There's not much competition. And I always say, if you can get organic positions, much better than the paid one. Biased a little bit. It's my favorite, as I said. So there's no alignment, or the campaigns are not aligned as well. You're pushing one topic on the organic side of things, while they're pushing something completely different on the LinkedIn ads, let's say. So there's a lot of misalignment that happens, which is problematic. I mean, it's a big one. What we started doing, it's easier when you have a client that you're delivering across services. Obviously, we can have meetings. We have regular meetings with all our teams there about a particular client. We were looking at the port structure as well as one of the kind of ways of dealing with like alignment internally. But it's so much trickier when you have different agencies. I mean, getting into a meeting with the other agency can be tricky. I mean, I'm very determined. I will like spam them with emails. They will get on that call. I think it's the Balkan spirit at me. I'm like, but it could be hard, and a lot of the time it doesn't really happen. Particularly if you're in there and the other agency delivers those services as well. Yeah. So there's this whole kind of, maybe I'm like tinted rose-colored glasses and think we should all get along and work together, but, I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's definitely that element. There is always, I've definitely felt this when, you're working with one of the other external teams and you realize that, they also do SEO as well, or they also offer these services. And you realize that they're probably thinking the same thing about us. And there's that little moment of tension there where you're all kind of like weighing each other up and being like, so how good are you at SEO? If you're this bad at PPC or good at PPC or whatever it is, how's your SEO looking right now? And are they then trying to pitch them like, Canada are terrible at doing this thing, so like come and work for us, and like always trying to like poach clients and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if I'm the other side of it. I'm very cynical. I'm almost like, I think everyone is trying to steal clients all of the time. You've got the rose glasses. I've got the conspiracy glasses.
There's a conspiracy ones. Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, look, like for me, it just, I know that might happen. I know that there are agencies that do that. I mean, even when you're not working with them, these emails of, I've noticed that your website has blah, 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 direct cold emails. And then I have a client who kind of forwards these to me. I'm like, no, actually, that's not relevant these days. Don't worry about that, What was I saying? Yeah, but it's from my perspective, I kind of think, okay, well, if you're going to try and poach my client, okay, try and poach my client. If I'm not doing a good job, then then okay, have them. I mean, what can I do? There's nothing that you can do. All you can do is stop yourself from doing good work by not trying to have that good relationship. And as I said, I'm big on alignment. So, even if they're going to eventually poach my client, if they do, that's my fault. I am going to kind of go in and try and get that relationship going, because I think ultimately it's better for the client. And that's the thing, you always kind of try and think about what's good for the client. So I don't know, again, maybe rose glasses.
No, I think like what's good for the client is such a powerful statement to bring everyone back onto the same page, because we're all at the end of the day working for this particular client, and we're all trying to make them, make more money, get more traffic, whatever the end goal is, whatever their KPIs are. And it's something that, funny enough, I've been talking about a lot on the show recently. I feel like the last 5 or 6 episodes we talked about this multi-channel approach and how we need more alignment in the channels, whether that's internally in one agency or with multiple different agencies, or it's all in-house. I think the same rules apply, where SEO side of things and like organic content creation can benefit so much from what the digital PR and link building team are doing compared to what the PPC and paid team are doing, compared to what the social organic and social paid teams are doing. They can all be completely separate teams, but I think there is value there that we can all learn from each other. And I think that is a sin plenty of agencies are guilty of, is keeping all these different departments very separate and being like, oh, we have an in-house PPC team, and we have an SEO team, and we have all of this. And I hear this a lot, where you hear that as like the sales point of an agency, right? Like, we can do everything. We're a full service digital agency. We are here at Canada. We pretty much do everything. We have in-house developers. We build websites, we SEO websites, we PPC websites, all this kind of stuff.
That's the one we don't do. the development one. The one I would go into, but maybe a different episode on that.
That's a whole other podcast. The sins of website building and design is a whole other discussion. But I think aligning on those channels when it comes to like, oh, what's the next push for content going to be? If you're thinking about a content campaign, think about how paid ads can help with that. Exactly as you were saying there, Emina, like if you're already ranking for stuff, and if it's already very niche and very specific, and you're already going for a lot of those like zero volume keywords and all this kind of stuff, you're going for the specific like high converting targets, you don't need to be paying for those as well on paid ads. And having that conversation is literally saving your client money.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like that's getting you in the good books and being like, see, I'm trying to help you guys out here. You guys can then, the PPC team can then refocus their efforts somewhere else, and we can see profits, benefits, whatever it is on the other side of things. And just having a simple conversation of, we all want's best for this client, let's all work together to make that happen, can be such a powerful statement and such an important thing to say.
It is, and I think, and that's the thing. That it's the crux of it, really. But it's also cultural, isn't it? Like, coming back to kind of, not all agencies will have that culture where what's best for the client.
No.
Unfortunately, talking about sins of agencies, and we spoke about like the toxic culture and things like that. And that's why one of the things that's super important, when you are, I sit in pitches and things like that. And one of the things that I always remind myself of is that it's an evaluation of a potential partnership. So it's a discovery, not just in terms of their KPIs and audiences and all that. It's also a discovery of their culture and seeing if that fits. And it goes both ways, really. I'm sitting there, I'm evaluating the client as well. I'm not like, I know, again, rose-colored glasses. Maybe it's because we're doing well. So, we can be a little bit picky. Maybe if the agency was tanking, maybe we wouldn't be that picky. I don't know. I don't want to sit here, potentially being a hypocrite. I don't know what I would do in those situations, but I would like to believe, and up to now in my life in general, some of the values that I have, they're very strong values. And I do pick my clients, and we do pick our clients. So it's important in that initial stage, really, when you're doing the discovery, to kind of understand that there is, the culture element is super important and it needs to be a good fit. And if it's not, then they're just gonna churn. And I come from SaaS, like churn. I'm just not like, that's the other thing with agency that the churn rate is just, it's incredible. I mean, seriously, I was a bit shocked by it shouldn't be that like that. It really shouldn't be like that. You can avoid that. A lot of the times you can avoid that if you were just bloody honest at the beginning, whether you can reach some of these results. I mean, like, if you know that a client is going to churn in 3 months because their expectations are super high, and you've sat there, said yes to these expectations that are not like possible whatsoever, what is the benefit of that? That client is going to be there for 3 months. You're going to have a terrible time with it because they're going to be emailing you saying, oh, what about this result? They're not going to be happy. You're going to waste a lot of time, everybody's time. And after 3 months, they're going to bugger off. So I just don't understand the kind of but yeah, as I said, maybe it's rose-colored glasses, and it.
I think we're exactly the same. Not necessarily. I don't think it's rose-colored glasses. I think it's all about your values. I think you're absolutely right. Like aligning not only like your team members when you're hiring. I think that's an important part of it. And the churn of agencies on that side. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the client side of things, I think, is so important. It's something we really focus on and highlight here at Candor. We're called Candor for a reason, because it means to be open and honest and transparent, and that's true for our team members. From my experience over the last 3 years, like having the directors John, Mark and Jessica be honest with us of like, this was difficult, we're struggling here, this is going really well, having open and honest conversations about the financial side of the business, the potential side of the business, all this kind of thing, and opening those doors for us to have those conversations about clients as well. And saying, for example, I received a message from a former client of mine saying, hey, are you still working in SEO? Are you still interested? Do you want to work together again? I'm now at this new company. I'd be interested in working with you again. I was like, yeah, cool, great. That's the best. That's the perfect connection, because you already have that relationship we were just talking about, right, with that client. You know that person, that marketing manager, that head of marketing, whoever it is, who's the connection there with the company and the client, you can work with them. And at first glance, it looked like it was kind of like military technology and all this kind of stuff. And I was having a conversation with John, who's our head of website and design, who's our creative director, and he was like, I don't know if I feel comfortable working in kind of like military associated kind of things. That's not really aligning with our values. We tend to be more focused on sort of like sustainable businesses and a lot of eco-friendly things. We tend to be very inclusive and all that kind of stuff. We strive for that kind of thing, and I'm not sure military side of things. And when I quizzed the client about it, and I was like, oh, what is it you guys actually do? Because their website was just a single landing page. Turns out they make like bomb disposal units, and they build the robots and the safety suits and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, actually, it's very good and like very like helpful. It's literally saving lives and all this kind of stuff. And we're like, oh, right, okay, that makes so much more sense. We don't want to that there's a quick conversation there to understand where your values align. And I think you're totally right. Having that conversation early on with the client rather than when everybody's angry 3 months later being like, oh, I thought you said this and you said this and you promised that, and having that honest conversation with actually, no, if you're in a position to say no, we are here at Candor. We have a waiting list of clients that we can say yes or no to. We're very lucky to be in that position. But I think it's a really important thing to understand if and when clients align with your values as an agency, and whether it's going to work long term or if it's just going to be a quick like, oh, they might be gone in a couple of months. I don't know.
I mean, sometimes you can't tell, sometimes
absolutely.
There's some edge cases where you kind of think, oh, is it? So you give it a go, which kind of reverts back to what we were saying about like overpromising. That's why you should never if an agency tells you guaranteed results, If there was a red flag ever, I mean, that's
That's
the
number
red
one, right?
flag. Yeah, that's the first one. If you tell me that, yeah, you can definitely do it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not true.
Let's talk about those red flags then, because I think it is something, like you said, coming from your years of experience in a house, I think that is something you pick up with the experience of working with different agencies, right? And I think for me, from my side of things, like I said, when I was working in house for a couple of years, the one that I noticed most when it came to agencies was the churn of staff and who ends up being point of contact and all that kind of stuff. Because I think we see that a lot here in the UK. I know we're seeing a lot of people losing their jobs, being let go, people struggling, all this kind of stuff. But it can be as simple as like the toxic work culture we were talking about earlier, that stressful, overworking culture, and just churning people through and being like, okay, in the next couple of months, it'll be a completely different team I'm working with. So on the original call you have with a client, it's like, oh, cool, it's Jack and all these people, and can't wait to work with Jack and Emina. They seem great, blah, blah, blah. 3 months later, we've gone and it's a completely different team who are still being onboarded or whatever it is. What's your experience with churn in agency side of things?
Honestly, like, we're a small team, and luckily, there's been our churn is not that bad. But I think when I was in house, one of the things that kind of struck me is, even when there's no churn, you sit at a pitch, you have 4 people there, and 3 of them seniors and 1 of them a junior, and that's the last time you see the seniors. You're kind of like, yeah, they've sold it to you, but that's the last time. And this is one of the kind of things that now I'm a little bit more understanding of. And so they haven't churned; they're still there. It's just that they just don't have the time or sometimes inclination to work on your account. It depends. It depends on the size of the account, which I really hate, by the way. We don't do stuff like that here, but it's one of the things that, again, agencies, since you have a big clients, everybody loves the big clients, and that service organization, a local service company is not getting anything, no love at all, and has an intern working on their account, which is just, for me, terrible. So there's a bit of there's a bit of not churn there, but there's a bit of a misconception around who's going to actually be working on the account.
Yeah, definitely.
That I'd hated. And that's like one of, talking about like red flags. So you need to be very honest, because now that I'm agency, I know how difficult it is to be involved on all of the accounts. It's just impossible. I can only clone myself. So I think there's ways around it. There's you look at what you're doing in the day and kind of see if you can tweak and maybe automate some of the things that you think, prioritize better. So to find that space, and also make sure that the clients understand that it's an open door policy type of thing as well. So I might not be doing your technical audit, but I will tell you that I will review it. Somebody else will do it, and I will review it. And any questions, anything that you might have, I'm always here to kind of support and help. So there is a bit of kind of involvement there of senior team as well. I don't know if I've answered your questions. I feel like you were talking
definitely
about churn of employees, and I kind of segued here into something.
That's totally relevant. I don't think churn necessarily needs to be they're no longer with the company, but like literally moving people around on different accounts can be a form of churn, right? And I think that can be just as frustrating from the client side of things when, like you said, you sign on, and this is totally relevant to us because Mark Williams-Cook, our SEO director, our marketing director, is such a personality and such a a tour de force in SEO, is well known in SEO.
Yes.
The majority of our clients come to us because they have heard of Mark. They may have worked with him. He's worked in the industry for 20 years. Like, oh, we worked with Mark previously 10 years ago. We want to work with him again. Happens to be he's at Canada, and we get a lot of our SEO inquiries because Mark is so well known. and Mark will be the person that's on the pitch call, will be in the initial onboarding process and all that kind of stuff. But you're exactly right, Emina. He's not the one that is doing the technical audit or the content briefs or the content audit or the ongoing pitching or anything like that for digital PR. Like, that's the rest of us in the team going off and doing that. But you're also right that I think you can balance that with the open door policy side of things. The amount of times I've heard Mark on calls with clients, both positive and negative, it can be when you need to bring in the directors and be like, okay, we need the head of department here to bring in the big guns, exactly, to solve the problems. Be like, this client isn't happy with this work, or things are not looking good. We're doing good work, but we don't know why it's not working. Maybe you need to have that conversation. You bring in the big guns to sort that out. But I think you can do that from a positive side of things as well, and have annual review meetings will feature the senior members of staff, or quarterly review meetings. However, you can kind of wiggle it around in people's schedules and things like that, and just having input. Like, I've worked with Mark on accounts where, exactly as you were saying, I go to him as like, oh, can you review this process for me? I've done this technical audit. Can you have a look and make sure I'm not going crazy? Is this a JavaScript problem? Is this this problem? Mark is super technical, has 15 years more experience than I do, so he's the perfect person I can ask for advice. And I think it's totally relevant to still have the senior members of the team in the picture, even while they're busy running the business, doing this stuff, talking to new clients, the million billion different things that heads of department and senior team members have to do. The fact that they're not just kind of shifted on from the background of like, we introduce you to Mark Williams Cook and now you're working with an intern for 6 months. Like, that's not the right way to do it. And I think credit to what we do here, and I know you guys do it, as you were saying there at Vixen, like, introduce that process. Like, hi, I'm the one doing the pitch. You probably know who I am, but I'm not going to be the one that's doing the day work. And if I'm the one that's going to be leading the account, I'm also on that call. So Mark will introduce me and say like, oh, Jack is the SEO lead on this account. He'll be leading it with the account manager, who is also on this call. Here's our PPC lead. They'll be leading on the paid side of things. Introducing them in that call, you set those expectations early, right? You don't say, oh yeah, Canada is a one person machine and I'm just going to run the whole thing, because that's not realistic when it comes to agencies. We're a team of 25, I think, off the top of my head. So we're not tiny, but we're not big. We're somewhere in the middle. We're in that kind of, and like I said, that includes the development side of things as well. So that's a combination of both sides of the business. And I think a lot of people will see agencies as either much bigger or much smaller than they are. And say like, oh, it's like a handful of people, it's a tiny little agency, or they must have 100 people running all these different accounts and things like that.
Exactly. There's hardly ever like a middle type of thing, but you make it work, and that's the thing. It's kind of just trying to find these spaces to make it work, and because ultimately when you have somebody like Mark in the company, presumably he has chosen his team. So
exactly.
It's kind of trusting that you've done your job, that the person that you came in for has done their job in terms of recruiting a good enough team to deliver it, which it's not easy. I mean, I've had like that, like where I went completely wrong, with kind of, everybody does have those like experiences in their careers.
I think we've all been on that from both sides as well. Been like, oh, I thought this job was one thing and it turns out I'm not happy. And the other side of it, like, we thought you were perfect for this role, but actually you're not gelling. I think that's especially coming back round to that work culture we were talking about as well. You're hiring somebody for their first agency job, or, they've worked in-house for years and now it's the first time. And the shock of suddenly, okay, there is a lot of other stuff you need to worry about on the agency side of things. Like you said, losing that control across the entire funnel can be such a culture shock for somebody like, you are working on nothing but content briefs for 2 weeks. You don't even look at anything else. Like, you have no time for anything else because this is what this client needs as soon as possible, kind of thing. And I think that can be a big culture shock for a lot of people to then realize, turns out agency life is not for me. Turns out I'm much happier freelancing or being off and doing my own thing, or working in-house. And I think that is totally justified, totally valid for
it's fine.
finding your place in the industry, right?
Exactly. And this is the other, like, it's really interesting talking about like going back to the actual churn of employees and stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to, I mean, obviously it's quite difficult to know what to think. Sometimes it really, especially these days, people are not going to stay in a job that they don't like. They will move jobs. Sometimes the fit is just not there. As you say, it's just not a good fit. There's no right or wrong. It's not the person, it's not the agency, it's not the culture. It's just not. You're coming from an in-house to agency. Maybe it's not. No, it doesn't work for you really. So it's a tricky one. I was reading this article actually about kind of Gen Z, how they suffer no fools. Yeah. if they're not happy in the first 3 to 6 months, they'll just go to another job, which, I do admire that. Like, I'm not the youngest. So, I've been in jobs where I was there for a few years, even though I wasn't sure about the job, because it just felt like, I should stick it out. I should try and it's a job type of thing. So, no, it's an interesting one, definitely.
I am totally guilty of that. I spent the majority of my 20s in the job I mentioned earlier, working in the language school, where I probably should have left a while ago, but it was like 7 years in that job or something like that. It was
wow.
I'm kind of person that's like loyal to a fault. Like,
you're staying. Yeah, me too.
I will just stick with it until something goes horribly wrong or whatever. And I think that's been true in a lot of elements of my life as well. But I find it so interesting. Exactly. Yeah.
Change. You don't like the change. Yeah.
Exactly. Once you're comfortable in something, you can kind of just cruise along comfortably and whatever. But I love, like you said, how much the younger generations, whether that's Gen Z, Gen Alpha, now getting ready to go into work as they, turning 16, 17, 18, all that kind of stuff. I find it so fascinating that they've got this I suffer no fools kind of attitude where it's like, no, I'm previously, I don't know, this is a very old school like recruitment thing where you would look at a CV or a resume and it'd be like, oh, you've had 6 jobs in the last 2 years. Oh, that's not very good. You've not shown brand loyalty, company loyalty, all this kind of stuff. But I think that's becoming less of a problem because it's more normalized now that you jump around, you make lateral moves. You're not necessarily going. Not everyone has to go up and up and up a ladder and go from junior in one company and then 10 years later they're the director of a company or whatever. That's not necessarily how a lot of people are moving, especially with how quickly stuff moves with agency side of things. Moving from agency to agency and different roles and different sides of things. As we were saying earlier, wondering if you want to specialize in something can be a huge reason for that as well. And I find it fascinating. Like, you called me specialized earlier because I do SEO, but in the grand scheme of SEO, I am not a specialist.
No, you could be a technical SEO.
Exactly, yeah. There's a specialist of a specialist of a specialist where it's like, oh, they're the JavaScript technical SEO person. It's like, oh, that's like 5 layers deep of specialization.
You know what I heard? This is really interesting. One that I never knew about that I heard the other day in one of my groups is schema vendor.
Oh, so nice.
This client is paying somebody who is a schema vendor about $1,800 per month to manage their schema.
Wow.
And I was thinking, I think I was a little bit too blunt. I have this thing where I'm like just a little bit too blunt sometimes, but I was like, what to me, like, and this is, I said, maybe it's an enterprise thing, but they're not an enterprise. They have like 1,200 pages. So this is a small site. This is a medium site. It's not a massive site. Maybe because I'm not specialized and I don't know every intricacy of schema, maybe there is something in schema. I know like dynamic schema is quite, that's the one that you need to like manage. But how much of it can you have to be just for that one thing? It was just shocking. But then, as I said, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's arguments on both sides of like, because I think you can get when you have such a niche specialist thing, and this is again totally guilty of plenty of agencies as well. You can sell yourself as like this super duper mega expert on this specific thing, and make it sound technical enough that the client has no idea what you're talking about. So I was
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, managing schema is a very difficult, time-consuming process, and we need at least 2 days a week of retainer time and blah 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 blah, and this whole conversation, and really oversell it and make it sound very complicated.
Exactly.
And I think that's a total sin of many agencies, is overcomplicating things and making it sound like, oh yeah, this job is really difficult and I'm the only person in the world that can do this kind of thing. When actually, and I will defer to you viewers and listeners, I'm sure you know a lot more about schema than shout out to Dave Ojeda, who I had on the show talking about schema. I know Dave is a listener, so Dave, please do message me and correct me and Emina here, because you know a lot more about schema than we do. But there's that element of like, from my experience of schema, you kind of set it up and then it's done, and then you don't really need to manage it. You don't really need to keep poking it every week and being like, oh, has the company schema changed? Has this changed? You need to do semi-regular updates as you're adding content, as you're building your site and stuff. But like you said, with 1,200 pages, how much management is there? Do you need nearly $2,000 worth of management to go through? Like, that's crazy to me. And I think the same is totally true, to briefly spin into the PPC side of things. We had a client come to us where they said they felt they were not getting value from their PPC side of things, from their management side of things. And their spend was going well, everything was going okay, but it kind of been stagnating for the last 12 months or so. And our PPC guy here had a look, and he said, there are change logs in Google Ads accounts, right? You can literally see who has gone in and changed what. And you can literally see.
Was it nobody in there for it?
They had logged in 4 times in the last year and taken a monthly retainer for 12 months and changed, maybe added 5 negative keywords in month 1, and then changed a couple of exact match to something slightly different, and slight adjustments in month 6, and barely touched it for 12 months and made, and it was a lot of money. It was a big retain. They were charging a lot for this management fee. And Mark and our PPC guy were like, this is unbelievable. Oh my God, how are they getting away with this stuff?
Yeah,
and it's
that
making it seem like, so our job is so special and ethereal and unknowable, SEO is so mysterious, PPC is so mysterious, when actually being open and honest, as we were talking about earlier, with your client and saying, to be honest, we've had these conversations where actually you don't need that much PPC management. In the grand scheme of things, your spend budget is going to be so much higher than your management budget, because once it's working, it's going to kind of work and need a little bit of tweaking here and there, but you won't necessarily need a huge injection of management every single month. And I think having those kind of conversations where you can say, actually spending less money with us is going to benefit you, can really build that trust with the client, right? Rather than it seeming, as you were saying earlier, Emina, the upselling of everything, yeah, if you spent £10,000 more, then you'd make this much more money, when actually the return on that £10,000 in terms of management time is not that different. I think plenty of agencies are guilty of that upselling, of just throw more money at the problem and it'll get bigger and bigger and we'll solve it.
Yeah, exactly. And with PPC, it's an interesting one, this account history. We've seen it. We've seen it at this end, and I'm always shocked. It's the same thing. SEO has its own equivalents, when somebody quotes you for disavowing links.
Oh God, yeah.
They're finally retiring the tool. So that the agencies can no longer quote that, or miscellaneous outreach for link building. We've hired somebody who I hired somebody once who was constantly trying to convince me that the good use of his time is for him to be doing outreach emails, every day. And I was like, no, that's not what you will be doing. That's not what you will be doing in my team. That's for sure. It's an interesting one. There's a lot of good and bad out there, really. There really is such a thing as a bad agency and a good agency. And then, there is that middle, I guess, where you're trying to do, you are trying your best. And I think that's the thing, that as long as you're trying your best and thinking about the client and what's best for the client, then you should be all right, really.
Yeah, I think it's all about the intentions, right? Like we said
Yeah.
earlier, we can be in a lucky position where we're able to choose our clients who align with our
Yeah.
values. But if you're starting off, and I know this is exactly true for Candor, because I've heard the stories from John and Mark in the early days where they were both working, they were not paying themselves, they were just working essentially for free and building up the money to pay for the hosting, pay for the
Yeah.
office space, all this kind of stuff, and really, really pushing themselves, doing all the things we've just told every agency not to do over the last 40 minutes. But
Yeah.
sometimes that's necessary in the early days. You take on clients because they're willing to pay you enough money, even if they don't necessarily align. If that's the
Yeah.
difference between keeping the company afloat and going out of business, then sometimes you've got to bite the bullet and do that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, we've got, I mean, hands on heart, we've had like a situation where it happens quite a lot actually in agencies. You have like one big client that is a very high percentage of your turnover, and then you have
you
lots
read
of
my
little,
mind, Amina. That's exactly
yeah.
what I was about to say.
And we've had that situation, and the big client, the relationship just wasn't working anymore. It was a great fit at the start. We had them for years. It was working really, really well. And then somehow circumstances change. It was difficult on their side. We're all in a recession. And there was a lot of pressure, like a lot of pressure, to the point where, we had to sit down and discuss whether this is something that we want to continue with. And it's super scary. I mean, like saying bye to your biggest client. I mean, it's just like even thinking about it is kind of, what will that mean for our team? What is the short term, what's the long term impact of this decision that we're going to potentially make in the leadership team? It was hard. I mean, it was really, really hard. And you have to just wait against long term and short term, as I said. Yes, long term, short term, it's going to be a big hit on revenue, and we're going to have to like make some cuts and kind of think about where we're going to get that money, how we're going to cover it. But long term, it's the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do for us. But, there are times even now, because obviously I'm part of the company and part of the leadership team, and we have, I'm invested in the company and things. But there's part of me that now think, oh, I wish we had that massive client sometimes, because the revenue would be so much bigger now because of the whole, like, we're doing great without them. But can you imagine now having them back and having this like massive client come in? But I don't regret it. I think it was the right decision, but it was a very hard decision. Even now at this stage of growth where we can afford to do that, it's still a hard decision. It's still, you kind of still think you have to be thinking about like the people that you employ and stuff as well, of course.
Yeah, 100%. We had a very similar thing happen at Candor recently where our biggest client was so much of a stress on the team. This has happened to me at the previous agency as well. I think when I worked at my previous agency, there was one client whose single retainer was bigger than all the other retainers put together. So it was like 50% or so of the digital marketing retainers were this one client. And that is, again, risky. I think an agency sin where people see this big number and be like, cool, yeah, that sounds great. Let's sign this massive contract. But exactly as you're saying, that can create so much stress on the agency team, being like, okay, you now need to deliver 110% because they're paying us so much money. Coming back to what we were saying right at the beginning of the episode, that over-delivering nature where you're over-promising and over-delivering and everybody's overworking. And then the other side of it, if something does go wrong, how much of the agency's revenue and profit, how long can you survive keeping your employees employed, feeding their families, paying their mortgages, rents, whatever it is? If that big client suddenly does go under, suddenly finds a new agency, decides to end the partnership, if you don't end that and you don't prepare for that, that can be a huge, huge knock. And I think so many agencies are guilty of doing that, all the eggs in one basket kind of thing, where you'll have one or two massive clients and then a lot of like smaller clients. But actually diversifying your client range and being able to say, oh yeah, even if we lose 2 or 3 of our clients, we still have enough room and enough, like I said, we have a waiting list here at Canada, essentially, of people wanting to work with us. That's a very fortunate position to be in, because
we're not there yet, but maybe we can have like in the back room, maybe we can have a quick chat how you've managed to get a waiting list, because we're doing quite well. I'm not complaining; it's brilliant. But like a waiting list is a level up. So, Jack, feel free.
I take no responsibility for it.
Throw some of those leads our way. So we have too much work to do.
There you go. We all can get along and we can help each other out. This is exactly what you're saying.
Exactly. This is it.
Yeah, I think that the element of that with the big clients being the thing that is like propping the whole company up is such a dangerous position to be in. And like I said, we're in a very privileged position here at Canada. We're able to say that we work with a big range of clients and a diverse range of clients. But I think a lot of people can get stuck in a niche or a rut and just be like, oh, we only work with this particular industry or this particular type of client. And then suddenly, you mentioned the pandemic earlier, Emina, like that being a huge thing where, oh, we work exclusively in this industry or this niche or whatever it is. And suddenly that industry is badly affected by global economic stuff that's going on, whatever it can be, anything from the pandemics to wars to the banking crisis. All this kind of stuff can suddenly completely transform people's lives and change industries. And if you've got all your eggs in one basket, that can be a very, very dangerous position to be in.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I keep coming back to the fact that it wouldn't even be fun. I mean, like we've kind of talked about that a bit. Like, do we specialize? I mean, I have a very soft spot for SaaS, and it's one of my I also have a soft spot for publishers as well. But then when I look at it, I'm interested in all of it. Again, not specialized. And I want to work with lots of industries. I want the experience of lots of industries. And it does open up the market for you as well. As you say, if it's in one basket, it's risky. It's super risky.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's wrap things up, shall we, with talking about how we can all just get along. I think it'll be a nice little positive note to end on instead of all the doom and gloom and red flags we were talking about previously.
I think I was quite positive, actually. Balanced. Yeah, we would.
I'll bring the negative, you bring the positive. It was a nice balance.
Yeah, and it's really strange that you say that. And it's like, seriously, I have become more positive because usually I am quite sarcastic and cynical and incredibly blunt. But yeah, maybe it's you, Jack. You bring out the positive in me. It's a good thing.
Or maybe I'm just so sarcastic and British that it balances it out a little bit. And it's just like, you can't even possibly be as sarcastic as I am. So you need to balance out with positivity.
Maybe that's it.
So yeah, I think the open and honest policy, I think what we talked about so much on this episode, is so relevant for us all getting along, right? Having that alignment of what's best for the client, what's best for the company at the end of the day is so relevant, but also being open and honest about your experiences with that client. If we've had agencies refer, like, oh, have you worked with this client before? I know having a referral system of like, oh, when a company comes to work with us and they say, oh, we'd like to know what you like to work with, we can give them the contact details of existing clients and say, hey, we've worked with these guys for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. Let them speak for us. We will not be involved in that call. You guys can have an open and free conversation. And I think that's a really powerful thing, to have those testimonials that aren't just like written on the website or whatever, although I do that for Canada, so that go and check out our case studies and testimonials. I'm the one that writes those.
Yeah.
But I think it's powerful for clients to talk to each other as well and say, how was your experience working with Canada? How has it been? What of the pros and cons, the ups and the downs and all that kind of stuff been? Have you experienced that before, where you've had kind of like client referrals and conversations and having that open and honest conversation?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, like a lot of our business comes from referrals. It's like with many good agencies.
Yeah.
Referrals are the ones that are, that you're doing something good when your primary channel is referrals. I mean, you should be really proud if that's the case. Because obviously people like working with you. We've done that. I mean, we have case studies and things like that. It's tricky with kind of going and talking to. There's always this, like, I know that our clients would give us a review, and they do give us reviews, and when I'm doing a case study, I do them for us as well. We send it over for them to look, and they give us statements, and it's the usual process. I always feel a little bit like careful around their time when asking for them to kind of talk to prospects and stuff, because you kind of think, will they have time for that? And there's always this a little bit of a squeamishness around taking somebody's time. But we do it, and I get over it. And I have a few, depending on who the prospect is, we always try and kind of match them with a similar industry. That's like one of the things, but it's not, they don't take, I find that not a lot of prospects will actually do that when you're talking about prospects. Even when you offer them talking to a client, they'll be like, oh no, a case study is enough, or whatever. Maybe it's the size of the companies, but yeah, I love referrals. I mean, I think, there's nothing better than somebody coming to you because somebody said that you do good work. It's just so gratifying, and so lovely.
Yeah, I think if anything, that's the opposite. That's an agency green flag, right? That's there you go. Since we're ending on a positive note, that is the way to do it, and you're doing good work and you're working with good clients when you know that. Oh yeah, we had a networking event in some city somewhere, and one of your clients happened to talk to somebody else at a networking event, and turns out they recommended you. That is proof in the pudding, right? That is the proof that you can do what you do. You can talk the talk and you can walk the walk, and prove that you're doing good work and doing what's best for your clients at the end of the day, for sure.
And you're transparent when you do make a mistake. Yep. We all make mistakes. There are things that you do that, or you're thinking, oh, this is going to work. And then you do it and it's a dud. Didn't work. Spent all of that time doing a piece of content. You were sure that it's going to go out with a bang, and it didn't. It completely flopped. And you have to be honest about those things. You really do, because, if the client can't understand that, that you're there doing your best, and it's about testing things. This is it. This kind of vocabulary of testing, just talk about it, because you are technically testing things. I'm not talking about experiments and stuff like that, but you're testing to see what's going to happen, and you're evaluating it, and you've learned something. If it flops, you're going to learn something from it. And I think a good client also understands that, and a good agency is not scared of kind of saying it. I think that's one way of getting along. I think being open and transparent, and not downloading reports from like tools and sending it off as a client report. Oh my God. I got, like when somebody downloaded me, I had somebody download a SEMrush report to me and send it to me when I was in house. And let me tell you, they got fired very quickly. That contract was no longer like, no, that is not SEO report. I mean, sorry.
We have seen that as well, where we've had that. We worked with a previous agency and they did a technical audit for us, and it's just an export of the SEMrush crawl, the Ahrefs crawl, the Systrix crawl, whatever it is. I was like, you're just white labeling this, and sometimes maybe literally not even white labeling. It still has the logo at the top there, and it's like, yeah.
You know what happened to me once? I know we said that we're going to end on a positive note, but I got to tell you this. So one of the things that I didn't realize when I was in house was that there is such a thing as an SEOer who doesn't use Google Search Console. So I kind of like, I was using it when it was Webmaster's Tools. I still called it Webmaster Tools for a very long time after it's rebranded. But I was using it in-house, and I wasn't SEO, I was doing digital marketing. But that was the thing that I was using, first of all, that and was. And then I hired somebody who worked in an agency, several agencies before, and they started working for us, and somewhere around mid-month one, I find out that they have not used Google Search Console. Yeah, that they don't know how to use it. And I was like really shocked. Like, apparently that's the question that I was supposed to be asking when I was recruiting for SEO. I mean, in my mind, my brain just was blown. Talk about sins of agencies, not to train somebody. And how we're not talking about one agency. We're talking about like a couple of agencies that they've gone through where they haven't been taught this incredibly, like, you have to have those skills. You absolutely have to. It's fine not to have them if you're starting off. That's what training is for, and you'll be trained. But if you've been in the industry for like 3 years and you've never used Google Search Console or don't know how to use it, opened it once, it's just mental.
That's terrifying. I find that stuff so fascinating when you learn. I talked to the other guys in the team about the hiring process, and people will include like Google Analytics and Google Search Console as their, like, I have skills in these tools and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I was having this conversation with Mark. He was like, isn't that just a given at this point? Like,
it's not.
You can't do digital marketing without these tools. And I was like, no, there are people that don't know how to use it. Perfect example there, Emina. I'm like, there are people that have worked in multiple agencies who've never used Search Console before.
Yeah, well, this is it. I think, Jack, it's like, I'm with Mark. I was like, I just didn't, like, maybe it's the amount of years that we've been doing it for. I mean, he has loads and loads of experience, but it didn't even occur to me. But now I'm much more careful. It's on there. You need to know how to use those tools.
Yeah, we were having the conversation of like, should you even include those in your CV because it's just obvious now? Like, everyone does that. You need, if you're talking about the way you use tools, it needs to be something impressive or unusual, or like, everyone has used SEMrush, Ahrefs, all the big tools, Screaming Frog, Search Console, Analytics, and I was like, no, they haven't. Some people have not been trained properly. Some people have not been given the opportunity to even use these tools, despite, like you said, working in an agency for years, and then suddenly realizing, oh, I could have been doing this the whole time. I could have been using Search Console. This is so much easier. and Search Console, I know this is a whole other conversation, but is such an essential and kind of underestimated tool in a lot of ways as well. Like, it is so powerful with some of the things you can do with it, and some people are just like, clicks, impressions, cool, yeah, done, no problem. Check it once, never check it again.
Yeah, no, it is. It's mind-boggling. I'm still surprised by it. Like, I've lived through it. I've lived through it, and I'm still surprised by it. But yeah, it is. It is what it is, really. And this is why it's important to kind of, when you're looking at agencies, you need to be like careful what you're getting. But it's not easy, because a lot of clients don't really, we're talking about this, don't really understand in detail, and it's easy for them, for agencies who are not, or freelancers who are not very honest and very, we say, white hat, to take advantage of that, take advantage of the fact that people are not as technical, that they don't understand digital marketing, and sell them services that they either don't need, or not actually set up Google Search Console and do their SEO. I mean, seriously, we have an SEO agency. Where's your Google Search Console access? I don't think we have that. You check the code. There's nothing. Absolutely nothing set up. not even Google Analytics, let alone anything else. Well, anyway.
It blows my mind how people would be doing any sort of digital marketing without some sort of way of tracking numbers.
Yeah,
Like, how do you
or conversions, not checking
or
conversions.
conversions? Yeah.
Because apparently that's not the SEO's job to track conversions. What? I mean, how does that work? You get all the traffic. How do you know that's good traffic? How do you know that those people who have come to your website have actually, are quality audience? They're your target audience if you're not tracking the conversion. Seen that one a few times with agencies doing SEO, but not setting up events in Google Analytics goals and stuff like that because it's not their job. What? How is that
for the
not your
analytics
job?
team or the conversion rate optimization team. It's like,
Which is
they're all kind of the same thing.
yeah, but which is fine if you have that. You don't have to necessarily. I mean, I don't agree with it, but I can kind of understand if an SEO said, "Oh, like you will need this. Let me give you an expert who can set that up for you." I don't provide this service, but we will need it for tracking. Here's an analytics expert who will set that up for you, and then we can use it for SEO. At least you're being honest about it. At least you're finding a solution rather than, sitting down, not doing anything and then just reporting on vanity metrics from SEO tools. Sorry, I'm getting all heated up.
No, I agree. Totally agree. So let's wrap things up, shall we? Thank you so much for joining me, Emina. It's been a real pleasure to rant and rave and be positive sometimes as well about various agency things. It's been a lot of fun. If the listeners do want to follow you on social media, follow SEOs Getting Coffee and all that kind of stuff, where's the best place they can do to follow you on there?
So I'm on LinkedIn all the time. So find me on LinkedIn. Find our website. vixendigital.com. Quite easy. Interesting name as well. Let's not get into that. And obviously, please come and see our podcast. It's quite new, and we hope we grow as big as Search with Cantor. We're fans. So please do come and listen, come and join us. We're always looking for speakers. I'm always really keen on talking about SEO and just having a chat. But it's been amazing, Jack. Thank you so much for inviting me. I mean, I love you guys. You do really good work. So.
Thanks for joining me. Like I said, I'm genuinely a watcher and listener of SEOs Getting Coffee as well. I know I messaged you the other day as I was. I think you like the YouTube video, right? Like, there's tracking a conversion right there.
Yeah, no, we're getting there. I mean, look. Somebody was very mean to us. They commented underneath 21 views. Ha, 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 ha.
Oh, wow.
Myself, really? I mean, maybe it's 21 of the right views.
And getting views on you, as I've discovered, turning this video podcast in the beginning of this year, views on YouTube are not easy to get when it comes to podcasts.
No, they're not. Yeah. They're not.
Yeah.
It's one of those. Yeah, and it is a bit of a vanity metrics, isn't it?
Yeah.
We just have fun with it. I mean, seriously, we literally started that podcast from me and Sean having a coffee on a Friday, just chatting about SEO and saying, "Oh, shall we film this?" So that's kind of how it started. So it's fun. It's nice. It's a fun thing for us to do. So.
Well, links for everything, listeners and viewers, will be in the show notes, so go and check them out. It's the video description on YouTube. You can go and follow SEOs Getting Coffee. Follow Emina wherever you want to follow her, Twitter, LinkedIn, all that good stuff. And go and check out Vixen Digital as well. I'll put the links for everything in the show notes and video description if you want to go and check them out. Thank you once again for joining me, Emina. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, I loved it. Thanks, Jack.
And that wraps up this week's episode of Search with Candour. Thank you so much for listening or watching, wherever you are listening or watching. Please do subscribe and like us on YouTube. Give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. all that good stuff, hugely appreciated by us here at Canada, and makes a huge difference for us spreading the word and growing the podcast, getting more guests on, and all that kind of stuff we've been able to do in season 3. And a huge thank you to our sponsors. If you would like to be on the show, if you have any topics, any thoughts, any suggestions, all that kind of stuff, you can get in contact on all the usual social media places. We're Canada Agency on both Twitter and Instagram. If you want to come and follow us on LinkedIn, we post a lot on LinkedIn there as well. You can follow me, you can follow Mark, you can follow Canada there as well. We also do live marketing events every other month called Search Norwich. So if you are in the Norwich area, please do come and check that out. And of course, check out our newsletter, which goes out every Monday and includes this podcast. So just in case you're not getting it in your subscription feeds, you can get it in your email inbox as well as Mark's SEO tips and about 8 to 10 of the most important search marketing news topics you need to know every single week. That's coreupdates.com to subscribe to the Core Updates newsletter. In the meantime, I'll be back next week with Simon Lesser from Dragon Metrics. I'm going to talk all about Simon's experience of building, growing, working on, and creating SEO tools all throughout his career. Something I don't have experience with. Don't get me wrong, some people at Canada do have experience here. We built AutoAsked. I didn't do that, and I think it's a really interesting conversation to get the other side of the perspective, because I use plenty of tools. I have used plenty of tools throughout my career, but it's interesting to get the insider scoop and perspective and try to understand what we know, what we don't know, and what we don't know that we don't know about how people build SEO tools behind the scenes, and get an idea of what the team at Dragon Metrics are up to and what they've been doing. And Simon's a fantastic, really, really smart guy, and it's a really, really interesting conversation. So stay tuned for that next week. I'm aware that should probably be the wrap-up of the month SEO recap kind of thing, the news episodes that we do with Mark and I here in the studio. That's going to be a week later, so bear with us on that. I've been away, Mark's been away. It's going to be a week later. It's going to be early in July rather than at the end of June. But same rules apply. We'll still be talking about all the latest and most important SEO news from the month and all that kind of stuff. So stay tuned for that in a couple of weeks as well. In the meantime, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and have a lovely week.